Hello, welcome to Snippets on Stamps. Today I'm talking with Paula Doherty, the designer, the artist for this year's Christmas stamps. So, Paula, I know you told me that you found out that you were approached by Royal Mail last summer, so summer of 2024, to design the stamps for Christmas 2025. Now, that's quite a big gap. Can you tell us a bit about the process of how you got picked and how the stamps came from what you started with to the end result that we see today?
Yes, so it started off, I got a call via my agent from Royal Mail to say, would I like to produce some samples that, it was obviously for the stamps, and would I like to do a couple of samples for their consideration? So, which was pretty exciting. So, obviously, I said yes, and so I did 2 designs, which I sent to them, and then had to wait a couple of weeks or a bit more to see if I was successful, and then I got a call to say that they'd like me to do them, which was like, ooh, how exciting! So then we took it from there. So I started off with pencil sketches, which I scanned into my computer and into Photoshop, and I drew them again and coloured them up, did the patterns same way, sketched them to start off with, scanned them in, and worked on those. And so the first 2, the samples that I sent, they were colour samples, and they'd given me those 2 topics. So that's the first 2 of the 5 stamps, and then they gave me the remaining topics, and so we sort of worked on them over a period of months, and I worked on the colourways, but I would have meetings with them every few months where they would decide whether they liked a layout or a colourway or a pattern, or if they didn't like a layout or a colourway or a pattern. So it was kind of quite a close collaboration. Because I wasn't used to gravure printing, some of the patterns had to be adjusted. They might have been too complicated, so they didn't. When it got to the printers and they sort of tried, did some samples, they realised they weren't going to work. So there was some of the technicalities had to be sorted out, and then the collector's sheet is done in a different way. It's lithograph, and there were a few examples of each one that they would say, oh, we like this one better than that one, or whatever. So and can you change that pattern, and maybe that layout, or we did work closely and to get to the end result. So but yeah, and it was just making sure that they all came together as the 5 worked well across the 5, and then also worked individually. So yes,
yeah, because there's a lot of colour and patterns in there, isn't there? And I think it's I know that I was thinking, when it comes to stamps and you're approached by Royal Mail, you're basically right, you draw it, Royal Mail give you a thumbs up, and then they get printed. But obviously, because it's such a small scale, it's the printing process that actually affects the decision on what type of patterns and colours can be used, which I certainly didn't realise. So when it came to drawing them, how big would your piece of paper be to draw them? Because obviously stamps are really quite small. You didn't have to draw it to that scale, did you?
No, I didn't. So I think we'd have all gone a bit batty looking at them that size. But no, I worked 4 times, or maybe a little bit bigger than that. So then I'd have to reduce it down to see what it looked like stamp size. So there was sort of a lot of that. So I think it's the technical side of it, and they had to do the same, because obviously and then so I would get a proof back saying this, we think this one works and this one doesn't, or pattern wise or color wise or whatever. And it was just sort of as I say, whittling it down until we got what they wanted, which so but I mean, like I said to you, I like drawing patterns, so it was quite fine. It was fine by me. So but yes, so that's how we did it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So thinking about your artistic journey, I'm just going to ask you this, if that's okay. Your artistic journey, you studied art as a child, you went to college and you did go and start a degree, but then your confidence stopped you, didn't it? From you weren't quite sure what you wanted to do. So can you talk a bit more about that bit? Your
Yes, it
journey.
was. Yeah, no, it was. So I did the foundation course, and I because I'd done fine art stuff at school, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do fine art or illustration, and I don't know. It was I couldn't make up my mind, and so I started my degree at Chelsea, and that was graphic design and illustration, and by the end of the first year, I still couldn't decide, and so I thought, right, I'll take a year out, and just see what I think. So I had deferred my place for that year, and I was supposed to just take the year off and then go back, and then 1 year kind of turned into 2, and then I didn't go back, but I still kept sketchbooks. So as I was traveling around and everything, so I was still keeping my hand in, and and when I came back, I started doing collage, which is what I still do now, hand collage. Taught myself Photoshop, and it sort of took it from there. But still couldn't quite take the leap into the art world. So I went off into a completely different tangent. I went on and did restaurant work and restaurant management and in London. And it only came back to it when I had my son. So
your son, you could say, was your inspiration.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah, he definitely was. And when I started doing children's books, and because he loved Jack and the Beanstalk, so I would do books for him. What happened to Jack after he'd killed the giant? So sometimes they'd be very short books, but so that was So I did children's books, and then sort of as the years went on, I started doing more decorative stuff, and that's how the stamps came about, and the religious side, the iconography of the religious side of things, and which I love. And so it's just sort of progressed from there. So I do less children. I still do some children's books, but it's more. It's sort of evolved now into something different. But so
You're definitely self-taught.
yeah, yes, yeah.
So just a quick question. Have you ever considered becoming a stamp collector?
Well, actually, I've got weirdly, because I do like going around the Oxfam bookshops and things and picking up weird old books, and I've got a couple of old stamp. So that obviously it's somebody else's stamp collection, and it kind of makes me a bit sad, really, that they've ended up in charity shops because somebody took the time to fill those books with all these stamps, and then it's ended up in a charity shop, which to me seems a bit heartbreaking. So I've sort of acquired those, but my best friend's stepfather is an avid stamp collector, so he's just delighted to hear about the stamps now. So that was really sweet. I got a lovely email from him. I do find it fascinating, and now, especially knowing the process, a bit more about the process, because I'd never even thought about that before, that side of things. And then you realise how prolific Royal Mail are, because they put out so many stamps a year. I was only working on the Christmas ones. So the idea of all of that going on behind the scene is just something that I hadn't ever considered. So so I definitely would. Now I've got my first collection because they sent me some samples, so I can start my collection with my own stamps.
There we go. Absolutely.